my mind is racing because you can go from this story to that story. It's like yesterday when everybody was saying something. I think we all had something that was relevant and that we would recall and spike another story. So that's why I'm gonna stick to today, not really details, but principles. And I'll try to weave them with stories that would be maybe instructive, but some of the principles, I'll start with the principles second. Something I learned from Jamuna about the early days of cooking. She said, she divided it into 3 phases with Prabhupada. She called it the Adi phase, the Madhya phase, and the Antya phase, with Prabhupada's Leela here. And she said the Adi phase was 1966 to 1970, and we're talking about cooking. And in that period of time, because there were limited things available, she says at that time cooking was really cumin seeds, dhania seeds, black pepper, red chilies, and coriander seeds. And lots of sugar, lots of sour cream. And that was really the start of ISKCON cooking. And then she said 1970, she called from 70 to 75 was the Madhya period, and that's when hing was introduced, mustard seeds were introduced, and it's when the devotees first went to India, and they started learning different regional cuisines, because they were on that Sankirtan, as you heard Koshaya and Srila Prabhu speaking when they would travel. Prabhupada always insisted, and in those days he did eat with the host. And he would enjoy it, and after every meal, he would tell the ladies, "Did you see how they made this? Do you know how to make this? Go in the kitchen and ask them." So then the cuisine started to change and to develop, and Prabhupada's cooking started to change, because when the devotees became more adept at making, more Indian flavored style cooking instead of, And personally, I was never trained in ISKCON cooking, so I've never even made garanga potatoes. I don't know how to do that, because my cooking was all done in India. So I learned from Pishima. I lived in Calcutta, and I would go to her home, stay with her and travel with her, and I learned from Palika. While she was cooking for Prabhupada, I was her assistant. And there was Daivi Shakti, and then of course I did have the great fortune to see Anand Prabhu. He was Prabhupada's godbrother, and he was Bhaktisiddhanta's cook, which I'm sure Srila Kirti knew him very well. And I have Jamuna's notes. When she passed away, Dina gave me Jamuna's handwritten cookbooks. So I have her notes of what Prabhupada liked. Prabhupada said this, and she had in there pages of what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati liked, because she would get that from Nand Maharaj. And there was one curious thing that was in there. It said he liked hing and salt so much the devotees could hardly take his Mahaprasad. He liked so much salt and hing in his food, his cooking. So there was that. So that was I spin around, but I always come back if my memory won't fail me. So to 70 then, to 75, all these new things are being introduced, Vadas and what else did you say, the Chilas, not the Chila then, the Vadas and Dayawada, the Idlis, things started coming from Indian cuisine, the cooks started learning them. And Prabhupada instructed, you'll see, from everybody speaking, he instructed each individual differently according to where they were, who they were, what they could absorb, what they couldn't, and what the time frame was. And Srila Kirti Prabhu had a very, unique relationship where he was not only the servant and massaging, but he was also cooking, and that was a lot to carry. And Prabhupada was very, very proud of him. I've, heard many things where he would glorify him, when people would come in, how he's doing this, doing that, and then he's cooking this, and all in 45 minutes. The Prabhupada would say. So that was but then when he had other cooks travel with him, things would change, and like he said yesterday, you wouldn't know what he wanted, basically, because he didn't really complain unless it was his health. But then as the cooks became more adept, he would start to require different things. And I know in the beginning it was fruit mostly, and some maybe yogurt, but by the time I came on the scene in 75, So then she called the 75 to 77 his Antya stage. And that was, we went from, okay, the basic spices, what we got in America and the West. Then in 70 to 75, Indian cuisine really took hold, and we learned more and more and more, and everything was available. And then when I came on, Prabhupada's health had started to change. He was starting to get sick more often, and we weren't using any seeds. We were grinding everything to a paste. Everything was paste masala. We would soak overnight cumin seeds, black peppercorns, I mean every single thing, even soak turmeric root, even grind our own sugar, grind the salt, grind everything. I'd go in an hour and a half before cooking with a stone. It's called a silbata, and it has a stone hand, and I would grind and have all my little bowls of all these paste masalas. So this was to ensure purity and quality. So those were the phases, and so then the principles that I want to talk about was, and I think every cook would agree, the things that Prabhupada insisted in the kitchen was quality, purity, punctuality, not waste. And there was one more that Jamuna and I would talk about this for hours and hours and hours. But these were the things that we concluded. I actually have them here. I brought my notes just in case. But so quality, purity, punctuality, waste. Yeah, that's what I have. And these things were stressed on every level, from what you purchase to, so for instance, we'll start with quality. And every cook that served Prabhupada would search far and wide for the best of. There's stories where, in India, when you live in India, you learn to live by season. When it's musambi season, you get musambis. When it's grape season, you get, now it's changed, but back then, you get cauliflowers, you get grapes, it goes on like that. So he wanted musambi juice. Musambi is a type of orange, type of tangerine. So in breakfast, he could have, some juice. Afternoon at 4 o'clock, he would have juice, fresh juice or a fresh dab, according to where he was. He'd get a fresh garland, and the servant who would bring it in, or I used to insist. I was really a nectar seeker, so I kind of pushed my way in on every opportunity I could. So I would make the juice, and I would come in at 4 and bring that, put a fresh garland on him, and then I'd put sandalwood paste on his head. So back to the story. This is what I do because I'm really Vata. So I know the devotees went to Vrindavan. They brought the oranges, musambis. Prabhupada said, rubbish. Then they went to Mathura the next day, same thing, rubbish. And then they actually drove all the way to Agra. And rubbish. He didn't like. And then I remember when Srila Kirti and Prabhupada were in Miami. I didn't know this yet because I hadn't entered into a service, but I'm also a type of person that seeks quality in everything. And that was that time of the year, January, February, and my 2 favorite oranges were in season. One was called a Murcot. It's a tangerine named after somebody in Florida, and another one was a Honeybell or a Mineola. So I decided to combine the two and ask Srila Kirti Prabhu if I could make this for Prabhupada, and so I just made it at home and brought it over. Prabhupada immediately wanted to know about this juice. Where was it? Who made it? Where did it come from? His sense of taste, his perception of quality was incomprehensible. I mean, he knew. I mean, devotees would say when everybody thought Prabhupada could look right through them, that he could see. He could see that, He did, he didn't, nobody would question that. But he could do that with ingredients. And devotees asked, what did Prabhupada like to eat? And Prabhupada said, whatever's well prepared. So usually on festivals or things, devotees will ask me, what should I make? What should I make? And I just go, whatever you know how to do best, make that. Don't, try to do this, try to do that. Because if it wasn't made right, he wouldn't even taste it. He wouldn't even taste it. I've seen him, When he was ill, also in '77, the theme was at that time to try to create things for Prabhupada to eat to get an appetite. And we tried that for a while, and he didn't eat much. So then we went into health things, and I was making fresh juices, and then I thought I'd make idli and make a dayawada and different things to get him to create an appetite. But I could tell you what he ate on the palm of my hand on a daily basis. But so this one day, I made idlis here, dayawada here, and then I did all these different types of juices. And then you didn't have a juicer, or you did, I don't know where you were when you made the noise, but I would grate it on like a big whole grater, like apples or peaches or pears or whatever. I'd get pineapple, and I'd squeeze it through a cloth. And so that's how I would, come up with a fresh juice. And I would do the same with coconut and get the milk out and so I'd mix it. So I was doing all these creative things with juices to try. And he would just take a spoon through the tali. And so this one day, he was, there's a story before that I just triggered that I'll try to tell you. I didn't put it here in my notes. But he took his spoon and he looked at the idli, and he pushed it with his spoon. He looked at me and went, he said, soft means soft as cotton, hard means hard as a rock. They should be soft as cotton. Didn't even touch it. Didn't want anything to do with it. He did the same thing on the dayabara. He wanted that spring, So Prabhupada wanted us to become expert, and it wasn't just like, oh, it's a nice quaint thing, let's cook for Prabhupada. It was a very serious matter. It wasn't, you could just get in there and do whatever you want, make whatever you want. You had to rise to you had to literally be in the fire if you wanted to stay there. But anyway, I got a little distracted here. So then let's see what else about quality. Prabhupada also said once that even though one is a good cook, if the ingredients, he said to have a well-made dish, you must have good quality ingredients. So that was one thing we always tried to do, was seek out the best quality. And I encourage you, it's not a matter of money but it's a matter of consciousness, what you pick, what you choose, and try to offer the best that you can in your service. And that's, very pleasing to Prabhupada. And the next thing was purity. And obviously we know internal, external, in our hearts. And then in the ingredients, like I said, so then when I started cooking and we were grinding everything to a paste masala, and so you'd heat I think the Gujarati cuisine does this well, and you'd make your chaunts and you start adding your paste masalas, and it layers and layers and it deepens the flavor. So there were no seeds mixed at all. And there was one time, we were speaking about Pishima yesterday, she did love to cook in mustard oil, and I used to go stay with her and cook with her, and that was the best khichdi I ever ate in my life, was made with mustard oil. I mean, you could get such fine quality of mustard oil. I know once when Jamuna was cooking with her at Radha Damodar, she sent Jamuna in to Loy Bazaar to get mustard oil. I think after 3 days she came back with a different one. Pishma rejected it. Then she went down with her and showed her and had them grind. She said they were grinding from brown mustard seeds. She said it had to be ground from black mustard seeds, and it didn't have that hot, toxic taste. So, and I remember Bhagaji, which he was mentioned yesterday, one of Prabhupada's dear friends in Vrindavan, he said that you could buy mustard oil as expensive as ghee. That was very, very fine. But it did cause Prabhupada swelling. It caused him swelling, and that's where he would always say, she's poisoning me, she's trying to kill me. He told me that once in Mayapur, because we were grinding everything, and every day she would come in when I was cooking with her, and she'd sit down with her foot knife, and I would tell her what we were going to make that day for Prabhupada, and she'd start grinding. We'd have dal soaked, she made fresh bodas, we'd grind the dals, grind the different things, but she always had her mustard paste, because she couldn't use oil. She got around that by grinding a lot of mustard seeds and putting the paste into everything, and that would kind of layer the flavor with mustard. So this one day, Plig, I just saw you. So this is when you left. You went for visa, and I was cooking with Pishima. And do you remember that timing? Well, her wrong visa was... Well, I got something to blame on you too. So anyway, we'll go there. Thank you. So her wrong visa was my blessing. So this one day after the beautiful thing with serving Prabhupada's lunch was, so everyone knows that he would sit by himself and he would eat, take up to like 45 minutes to eat. And you'd come in sometimes and his eyes would be totally closed. He'd be closed and he would just be chewing. And it was almost like you were disrupting. You'd put down and you'd walk back out. Sometimes he'd say something, sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes he'd just nod. And then after he would eat, he would finished, he would sit there. I won't do it, but the one leg up, on his chonky, he'd be sitting there and he'd be picking his teeth with a toothpick. And there would be crumbs everywhere. It's like there was a party just happened. I mean, there was chapati, because he would take all the katoris and dump everything and then put the katori outside the plate. But somehow or other, chapati crumbs, rice, this on his dough, everything, the floor. And he'd sit there and he'd pick and he'd watch you. This is when you really felt him looking through you. And he'd watch you, and if you would miss things, he'd point. And he would just wipe. And this one day he was picking and he said, "Do not let her back in the kitchen." I was like, oh God. He said, "Is mustard that she's giving, she's killing me." He said, "Do not let her back in the kitchen." I knew that was going to kill her. So I was like, okay. So the next day, Pishima comes, she had this beautiful little waddle about her, and she sat down with her foot knife and big smile, brown cow eyes looking at you, and, what are we going to make? And your heart is just going, oh, God. So I prayed, and I said, "Krishna, save me. How do I do this? How do I manage this?" So I said, "Pishima, Prabhupada bolo sarson ne." And her eyes just went, whoa. She just looked at me like it was unbelievable. Sarson in Bengali was mustard seeds, rye. I said, "Prabhupada, sarson ne." And she was in disbelief. So I thought if I managed her to take away the mustard, then I could keep her in control. And so she looked at me in disbelief, and so she was there with the stone, and the stone, it's a piece of marble or something, or granite, I'm not sure. It's just a rough stone, and there's pits in it, like it's chiseled. So then when you take your rock to grind, it goes in these little grooves, and that's how you grind things up, and it makes a paste. So she looked at me, and we're sitting there like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And she's begging me, looking at me with her eyes. So I go in the katori, I pick up one tiny, tiny black mustard seed. I mean, the little sillas. I put it on her silbata, and I said, "Pishima bas." And she looked at me like in disbelief. I mean, it fell in one of the grooves. You couldn't even get to it. It just went, and she took water and splashed it, and she started to grind, and we cracked up laughing. We just started to laugh because she had to have that, but I just wasn't going to give it to her. So anyway, we went on about cooking, and so I felt, okay, I managed that problem. That wasn't going to happen again. But what was I going to say next? So where were we on the... So if we're in Mayapur, so this is 1977 in Mayapur, and forgive me because I am jumping around because it's a small amount of time and I'm trying to cover different areas to give you the most of what that I think is instructive, that will, you can take away something. And one of my favorite favorite stories. I think it was after you left, Pilika. It was at the same time. Left for your visa. After Prabhupada would eat, there's so many stories that are mixing here, and I just don't know where to begin. Anyway, I'm going to continue on this track. So after you'd finished cleaning up Prabhupada's plate, you would go down and then you would transfer it, and we were in the main building there, and there was, 3 floors or something, and you would take it and you'd walk around each floor. And the devotees all knew this was coming, so like a half an hour before, they all started to mingle in their little 2s and 3s and 4 groups around. And honestly, I hated this service because it would take over an hour to do this, and I'd walk the halls, and no. Everybody wanted to pick what they wanted to pick. And it was like, okay. And so this was going on. It would literally take an hour. And every day I just started to, grind my teeth at this and then go up and finish. And then one day when I'm sitting there wiping, Prabhupada's picking his teeth as usual, and he's looking, and he looks at me and he said, when you distribute, you should mix everything. I looked up and I went, okay. And so he said, mix it and then distribute it. But I have to tell you, as evil as I was, I went down. I didn't only mix it, I kneaded it like bread. I just took the palm of my hand and took the shukta, took the sweet rice, took everything, and just kneaded it into this one brown blob. And then I started the halls, and I was in really disbelief. I mean, they were just in shock. And to see the reaction of everyone was in shock. And the first day, they took a little, and then the next day I came, it was like half of the people were there. And the only thing I didn't mix, Prabhupada put on his plate every day were 3 green chilies. It wasn't that bad. So, and he would take a nibble out of them, he'd dip them in salt and eat them in between the dishes. So I left the chilies aside, and the Bengalis would always take the chilies. So that was fine. So second day, half. Third day, a trickle. Next day, nobody. Nobody was in the halls. And every single day, I would go down and I'd eat the whole plate, take a few people, and it was absolutely delicious and divine. And I did this, even though I knew they weren't there, it would take me 5 minutes. Everybody was gone. And then I'd still do it out of duty. I'd do the same thing. I'd go, I was gone. And it was taking me an hour before. And so for the 5 minutes, I'd go downstairs, and any one of my friends, I'd tell them they'd come, they'd take some, but I'd generally get the whole plate. And I'm not joking you, I still continue to need it, and it was literally heavenly. So that was really one of my favorite prasad. And then not only that, I learned later when I came back and told Jamuna and Dina that story. Dina said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did the same thing. And he would ask his cook when they would distribute who took the fried, who took the sweet, who took the chewed, the datta, the drumstick. He wanted to know who ate the drumstick. If you ever had drumstick, it's painful. I mean, it's just straw. And then when someone's chewed it and sucked it, it's like needle straw. And he wanted to know who took the drumstick, because he knew that that person actually understood and that what he was eating. And then he told his cook to mix everything. Because this, took us off this bodily platform. The Maha is pure mercy. I mean, that is so special to be able to get that. But if we were just thinking of our senses, I want the pakora, I want the kachori, I want the sandash, I want the rasgulla, who was understanding what they're really getting? So he wanted to know who was eating the drumstick. And that was quite revealing. And I didn't, know that at the time, but I just felt then Krishna, by his causeless mercy, gave me special mercy, because I didn't see any of that, and I just wanted it myself also. So that was, the spiritual master is very expert at exposing our false ego and where we're at. And that's whether he did it in quiet or by example, or something that he was very hard on and that he could tell, or he wouldn't say anything. Even by ignoring you, you would know where you're at. I mean, he did that to me on numerous occasions. I know two of when I was not in good space and fighting with my husband. And one occasion I think it was in Mayapur, I had a flower, and I was standing right here next to him, from here to here, and the servant was here, and I kept trying to hand the flower. He was ignoring me, and I was a little determined, so I tried maybe 5-6 times, and I obviously was annoying him. He snatched the flower and handed it to his servant. I was like, whoa, okay. And I, just like a mirror went up, and I had to have a whole life review all of a sudden over the next few days and realize, where I was slipping and exposing myself. And then there was another time in contrast to that in Calcutta. He was leaving, he was getting in the car, and I had this gardenia, and I was in really good space, and my chanting and prayers and the service, I was right, in the fire. And Prabhupada was at the car, and I handed him, I was handing, you just wait for him to take it. He immediately took it, and before he drove off, I bet he smelled it 15 times. And every time he smelled it, I felt this rush go through my body. I just felt this, and again, it was just this type of that you knew he was able to expose you to whatever level. And even if it was in silence, he could encourage you, or it was still encouragement if it was chastisement or ignoring you or whatever. And that was, one of the beautiful aspects. And Prabhupada did this to every single one. It's like Krishna would, everyone felt Krishna was with them. And Prabhupada had that ability to each and every one that was, in his presence, that they felt this connection and that love. And Prabhupada was so kind, and he was so loving, and he charmed us. I mean, we fell in love with Prabhupada. That's all it was. People ask, they think, oh, what'd you do, or what'd you sacrifice, and you all sacrificed so much. And I'm like, I never thought of it as sacrifice. I just fell in love. I fell in love with Prabhupada. And that everyone did. And that kept everybody moving forward. And it didn't matter what we walked away from or gave up or didn't sleep or what we were doing. Just like Koshaya said yesterday on the train, that intensity of serving him or what he wanted, there wasn't a question you couldn't do it. You found a way. You made it happen. I don't care what it was. You made it happen. And that's what everyone in Prabhupada's service did. And if they really didn't, then they didn't last, because that was the level of standard that was required to maintain. And yesterday I mentioned that Palika Prabhupada said to me once in Bhubaneswar also. He looked at me, I think after I gave him his medicine, and Palika was sick that day. She was out, it was Arundhati, and Palika and I were staying out in a mud hut. And he looked at me and he said, "You've made very nice duplicate of Palika." And I went back to the room after lunch and told Palika what he said. And her understanding, which is the correct understanding, she said, well, what he meant by that was there was no interruption in his service, that it was seamless from her cooking to me doing the cooking. It didn't disrupt him. He didn't have to suffer indigestion. He didn't have to suffer having to instruct you differently, that it was on time, it was there. So it was seamless. So that made him happy. And that's, what he wanted. And so when she said that, I was like, yeah, you're right. I could see that. So that was quality and purity. And the next thing was punctuality. Prabhupada, for some of you that just came in, I was speaking principles, not details. I'm kind of going through the things that I took away in Prabhupada's service. And it was quality of ingredients, purity, punctuality, and waste. So I'm kind of going through these principles and then giving you a couple stories that weave those principles. And punctuality, Prabhupada's life was like a Swiss watch. time meant, if it was 12 o'clock, it meant 12 o'clock. If it was 1 o'clock was lunch, 1 o'clock was lunch. And this one time in Calcutta, we had just arrived from Mayapur. And so you jump out of the car, you immediately run to the kitchen, and you begin making lunch. And so at that day, he was going to have lunch at 1 o'clock. And it didn't mean 1 after, 2 after. I mean, it meant 1 o'clock. And so I thought I was doing good. I mean, I don't think I arrived at his door. There were those big French doors that were described yesterday, very tall. I think they must have been like 10 feet doors. And I had the tray, and when I opened the door, he was sitting there in his little seat, and he was staring at the door. He was just staring, very serious. And I opened the door, and he looked at me, and he said, "You are 3 days late." Didn't say a word. I mean, it couldn't have been more than 2 minutes after 1. I mean, it may have been 1 after 1, I don't know. But he said, "You are 3 days late." He said, "Don't you know when appetite comes, if you do not eat immediately, disease will follow?" I never, ever, ever said a word. I never gave an excuse. I learned that early on by watching others when there was one incident, and I happened to be in the room when Prabhupada was asking someone, or they were telling the story what happened, and Prabhupada was just staring at them. And they were telling the story why they didn't this, why they didn't that. And Prabhupada looked and said, "You've become very expert at defending yourself." So I was of the type, always taking notes, always have my notepad, and I made click, got that one down, So I made a point whatever he asked, I just looked dumb. Just didn't say it. So he said, "You are 3 days late." And then the instruction was, he said, "Don't you know when appetite comes, if you don't eat immediately, disease will follow." So like Palika did say yesterday, Prabhupada followed a certain standard and a certain diet, and punctuality was very important. In Vrindavan, when I was cooking with Devi Shakti during Chaturmas in 75, she was training me to take over Prabhupada's service because she was leaving for Tehran, I think. And at that, believe it or not, when Prabhupada was in station for a long period, you couldn't get people to do things. I was literally cleaning his rooms, doing his clothes, doing his garden. I was doing his breakfast and his 4 o'clock and his evening when Devi Shakti was doing the lunch. And I had no help. And so it was all timing. And the way it was set up was I would come in, I'd go to Mangal Artik maybe for 8 minutes, 10 minutes max, and then I would go to his quarters and I'd come in the front. He'd be in his front room. He'd either still be translating or he would be taking a little nap. He'd be laid across his bolsters. So I'd walk through very quietly and then go there. It was his servants and then the bedroom, and then I'd start with the bathroom because I knew if I did the bathroom first, because as soon as he got up, he would go to the bathroom and then he would go on his morning walk. So I'd start there, and then you're right, I'm trying to remember my train of thought because there's a few stories in there. So I'd start there, and then I'd go to the bedroom, and then I'd get his prasadam room clean, and by then I'd go start the breakfast. So I'd leave the rest of the house till later. So I'd start the breakfast, and then I would listen for the bell. So there was class, and then when they rang that bell, I knew exactly how many minutes. When Prabhupada stepped out and he walked till he would sit in that seat. And it was timed like, it was amazing. It was amazing. And so when I heard that bell, I knew I had to speed things up, and then I'd come through the garden, and as that plate was touching that, just above this chonky. He had one leg on, one leg crossing, and he was just sitting. It was like a jumbo jet was just going down. And the plate would hit the thing, and then that would be it. I mean, he didn't say, but if it was wrong, he would have said. So everything went timing. It was seamless, and that's the way he wanted his life, and that's why he had certain cooks all the time that he liked to be there. He'd call for Palika, he'd call for Shruti Kirti, he'd call for Jamuna, because they knew they were trained personally by him, and they knew what he needed. And so that didn't disrupt his service, which was his translating, and that was his most important thing. And he didn't get sick, because it's very important that he didn't get sick. And regulation, as you heard by that last story, that I was 3 days late, that he would get ill. So that was another one on timing, on punctuality. And let me see if I had, what time is it? Ooh, we're almost up. Okay, I'm going to move on real quick then to, I want to tell this story about Palika. And this was in Vrindavan. This was another, it's a great story. After Prabhupada ate, I would go in with her, and because sometimes we'd have so many katoris, she would hand me things and take off his tray, and so she'd be there cleaning, and he'd be there picking his teeth and watching. And so Palika would be bent down, and and I don't know, in India, within seconds, the ants were there. The ants were just all over, and they were already getting the crumbs, already getting the rice, already getting everything. So Palika was putting the katoris on, and she was wiping the ants. And do you remember the story? Okay, good. Let me tell you this. So she's wiping, and Prabhupada's picking, he's looking, and he goes, he went like this on the table. He said, if you simply, they will go. He said, it is best to kill as little as possible. I'm standing there and I'm thinking, check. Got that. And so Palika's tapping, and they're going. And so then, I don't know how many months later, I was down in Varda, in Pune. You didn't come. We were in Bombay, and I went on down. It was the Bhagavad Gita conference. And so I'm there cooking for him, and it's after the lunch, and I'm telling you, there was the crumbs everywhere. And I even was so bold. I've told devotees the story, and they were shocked. But, probably sitting there cross-legged, and his whole was chapatis and rice, and I'm wiping, and I can see, and I'm thinking, oh God, what do I do? So I literally took his, and I'd go like that, and I'd fling, and the rice would go up so I could catch it. So do this. I just saw it as, I even helped him pull his sweater off. He was in there alone. He was struggling, and I'm thinking, oh my God, he's an older man, and so I helped pull the sweater off, put the shawl, wrap around, and he just walked right on, I mean, to me, it's common decency. It was courteous. It was just manners, good manners. So this is what I did. And so then that day, so after I'm doing this and trying to get on, he's sitting there picking, his knee is up, he's had a nice meal, and he's watching, he's even pointing where I'm missing. And then I'm seeing ants, and I'm thinking, I got this. I really got this. So I'm going to the table. Prabhupada's picking. He goes, what are you doing? And I'm like really pleased with myself. I go, oh, Prabhupada, I'm making the ants go. And he goes, simply wipe them away. I couldn't even look up. I was so shocked. I was so shocked. I just started wiping them. Okay. And didn't say another word, and then, cleaned up and proceeded to go out the door, and I'm thinking, what just happened? And then somebody said, oh, she was in Vrindavan, and, and I'm like, no. whatever, he told her that's her business to figure out whatever he said to her. Mine was pride. Prabhupada exposed my pride. It was all about, I was quite pleased. So I was like, I got this one. Prabhupada. And when he slammed that down, I was just like, no, that was about exposing this sense of self. And so Prabhupada was very expert at that. And so that's just a little vignette into a slice of Prabhupada's day. I didn't even touch on some of the stories that I wanted to tell you. But at any rate, so I hope that there's something you can take away with this, they're relevant, whether it's the quality, the purity, the waste. The waste, I didn't say, I got to say one thing about waste. He didn't like it. Jamuna told a story once where he walked in the kitchen and there was 2 grains of rice on the floor. And she said he looked with watery eyes and a very soft voice. He said, "Do not waste a grain." He says, "It is a gift." He said, "It is a gift from Krishna." And during that time that I was doing all that cleaning in Vrindavan through Daivi Shakti, so then after he would eat, then I'd begin to clean the rest of it, and I'd finish upstairs, the second bedroom upstairs, and I'd leave the fan on because the floor was wet, the marble floor. So this one day, I did that, and he came downstairs. Daivi Shakti and I were in the back garden, and he said, "Come." We just quietly followed him up the stairs, and we walked into his room, and he stopped, and he looked, and he said, "Fan is on, no one is here. Who is wasting Krishna's energy?" So again, and to this day, I'm like a nutcase. I walk in the dark because I'm turning off lights, I'm turning off fans, I'm trying to tell my kids, don't waste. And then once again, when I was in the kitchen with Pulika and Vrindavan, Prabhupada came in. This was another story I wanted to tell you where he taught us the Punjabi buddy sabji. So, but I'm not going to tell that whole story, but when he first came in, or actually when he first got to the door, he looked and he paused and he said, "I've never been in my kitchen before. It is very nice." And then he immediately turned, and I had a bucket there, and I was cutting the vegetables, and like with the cauliflower, there's that core, and you can twist it, and you have the core. So that's what I knew. I twisted it, and the core was in the bucket. The bucket went to the cows. Nothing was wasted in that sense in India. Everything went out to the street, the cows. First thing he said when he walked in, he says, "Why you've thrown this away?" I didn't say a word, but I took a note of it. Okay, I got to figure that one out. And they use everything. I saw the leaves on the green, the cauliflower, that core, they would take those leaves, chop it, and put it in dal. They took that core, they'd chop it, and put it in a sabji, For being from the West, to me it was less than, and I didn't think of using it. But these were just instructions. It gets your mind thinking on, again, purity, quality, punctuality, and waste. So we try not to waste everything because everything is precious, and time is precious, and life is precious, and everything given to us is a gift. It's precious. So then we use it in service, and we use it for spiritual master and Krishna. So please take any of these stories and share them and encourage one in devotional cooking and Prabhupada's standards and Prabhupada's instructions, and you'll be very happy. Thank you very much.
Shri Rupa, thank you. Thank you for all your devotion. I have a few announcements to make before we bring the rest of the panel up here. First of all, I want to acknowledge everybody who's here and who's online. We're very, very few in a world of billions of people, and never should we take our mutual association for granted, that we have this interest in the pure devotee, his pastimes, his teachings. We value each other's interest. And I say that to everyone who made the effort to come here and everyone who's watching and will watch this. We are really lucky, fortunate people indeed. So I just wanted to remind us of our good fortune. How many of you saw the movie Hare Krishna, the mantra, the movement, and the Swami who started it all? Can I have a raise of hands? So if you want to share that with others, I'm going to pass these around. They're not for you to keep, but this will give you a means by which you can purchase that DVD and share it with others or have it online. So I'll be just kind of handing it out on both ends of the room. And we thank Yadavar and Vishaka and the entire team for doing a fantastic job of presenting Srila Prabhupada to the people who are unfamiliar with him. In addition, before we get any further, I want to say that a great round of applause for the two originators of this festival, Devala and his brother Kishore, who have passed the baton of management to Prema Vrishti and Guru, who've taken it on this year. I'd like us all to give them a great Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. They already have shown that they're very capable in organizing the festival, and may this continue on indefinitely into the future. Also, Duke Tapan, who's done all of the sound. You'll notice that everyone doesn't have to pass the microphone around. It makes it much more spontaneous. He's brought in all his equipment, spent his time. Wherever you are, Duke Tapan, we need you to operate it now. If he's outside, can someone bring him in? Thank you very much. Without good sound, then we're based on sound. So that's very important to our movement. Also to the New Dwarka community, President Savas Prabhu, the boss of the president, of course we know, Tadit Devi. Without those two, the festival would not be taking place. So let's hear a Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And also to Parchakananda, who's been a supporter of this festival for the last 28 years it's been going. Let's hear it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Cannot give enough thanks. And this particular year we brought in Prabhupada's cooks from places as far as France and the East Coast and Hawaii. So that's not inexpensive, those airfares. Vaikuntha, are you going to be helping with the collections this year? Not this year, but someone will be helping with collections. We would very much appreciate your gratitude in the form of Lakshmi to offset these expenses that have come to the temple. And it will be firmly fixed in your eternal bank account and will never be able to be removed from that bank account. So please participate in supporting this festival and make it so that the festivals in the future can also feel, the organizers can feel that they're supported and give you even a more grandiose kind of festival. So I wanted to also acknowledge all of the cooks for coming those distances and making the effort, and the people who are hosting them, we thank you very much. And the people who are accompanying them, we thank you very much. There's a lot of organization that goes into these 2 days and these few hours. And I'm not going to take up any more time, but I do want to stress the importance of the support that we need to continue this festival, and my own gratitude for being allowed to take on this wonderful job of coordinating the speakers. So let's invite our speakers, all of you. Please take your places in your chairs. We're going to do some more panel discussions, and then at 12:30, we're going to have 2 demonstrations going on outside. Now, I do want to say that I did yesterday was so I had that experience that we're always anxious for, that taste of the nectar for which we're always anxious. I actually, when I bit into that kachori that Kishori made yesterday, those of us that were fortunate enough to get that taste, that was a taste of Vaikuntha, I have to say. That was incredible. Not to say that the kachoris made, for the feast aren't good, but there's good, there's best, better, and most best. So those were really amazing. So today, again, we're going to have an opportunity for 4 different preps. Yesterday we had kachoris and a very special dal, and those that stayed learned how to make it. And we do have a video of it, but the price of that video is going to be very high. And the proceeds of that will go toward the festival. So do gather around the outdoor kitchen, which has been specially set up after we stop the discussions here. And also take advantage. These cooks are stuck here for 2-3 days. You can approach them and ask them questions. And I'll be asking some more questions. I got a letter this morning from the Russian contingent. Thank you so much for asking some of the questions. Can you continue, please, to ask the rest of the questions? So that they're watching. The eyes are watching out there. So let's have everyone take their place and continue. And I'm going to seed the beginning. I'm going to seed this. Where's Hari? Is he here? Hari, you're there? Okay, everybody's here. Just making sure. Now, one of these questions is, how did Srila Prabhupada, how did Srila Prabhupada cook 11 preparations in 45 minutes in his 3-tiered cooker? Now you're going to be demonstrating the 3-tier. Who's demonstrating the 3-tiered cooker? Just now coming. We need some sound to put on the mic here. Try it again.
No, I'm doing Srila, but I actually have.
I can, because I can, but I'm supposed to be making, at Bhaktivedanta Manor, he called me in one day and he said, today make the wet vegetable with paneer, peas, potato, cauliflower, and in the way. And I did. So he asked for it for 10 days in a row. He said, make it today. The whole time he stayed at the manor, he kept saying, make it today. So that's one of the preparations I'm making. I can make it in the cooker, but it's going to be a very small amount, which is fine.
I actually have it written down in my book.
Okay.
Which is what's on my iPad in the car, exactly how he did it, because he did it. And exactly.
I would like to see that.
Yeah.
Yesterday, one quick thing. Yesterday afternoon at around 2:30, I got a text from Ambarish Prabhu. And all it said was, Namkeen, with an exclamation point. It's the word she said about 50 times in her talk yesterday. So obviously, him and his wife were watching, who she's, of course, Bengali descent. So she must have been saying, so he just put it in there, the word Namkeen, he said. And then he wrote another one saying how much they were enjoying watching this festival from Gainesville.
Okay, well, let me then move on. So you're going to cook in the Prabhupada cooker.
Sounds like he won't. You are? You can make it in 2 tiers. You don't have to
He's
make.
just going to do his prep in that cooker, and that's it.
Okay.
You can make it twice in the 2 tiers.
Okay.
You know, it's very boring to watch a cooker cook. It just sits there. I mean, why is this such a big deal? If you want to do it, the best demonstration is to show how you set up the cooker to cook, not have to sit. It's like watching paint dry.
Right. Well, that's what we have. That's what we have dissolves for in cinema. You know,
Yeah, but you don't have it out there.
Right. Okay, so you can show us how to set it up. Yeah, okay, that's good. Now, a question which they asked, and we'll just start this, we won't carry on. Is it appropriate to offer the spiritual master Boga? Kind of answered that yesterday. But generally, we understand that we first offer what we cook to Krishna before serving the items to the spiritual master. This is their understanding. I've heard that some cooks offer Boga to Prabhupada directly without offering it to Krishna first. Did Prabhupada give any instructions to his cooks on this subject? And in the cases where he was offered Boga, was he aware of it?
The spiritual master, from my understanding, offers it to Krishna, not us.
We don't, we offer it to
We
Prabhupada.
offer it to
You'd never
Prabhupada.
have to offer it to Krishna before you give it to Srila Prabhupada. He
I have
never
a few
asked that.
Prabhupada stories about that. One was on the train, 1971, in India, of course. So they went to the one stop, and Prabhupada told the devotee to get kachoris. He said, they're okay. He said, you get them from this station here, get them from this man. So we got the kachoris, and then he brought them onto the train, of course. And then he put the bag down, cleaned everything off, and then he went and he started to get down onto the floor to offer them. And Prabhupada said, what are you doing? He said, I'm offering the kachoris. He said, I'm right here. And another one was in the kitchen behind us here. Rukmini Dwarkadish's Rukmini's kitchen here. And Prabhupada, he would often go through the kitchen in New Dwarka. New Dwarka, again, was the training place for all the temples in the USA in the 70s, in the early 70s. Shalavati, she was the one training so many. And of course, she was so devoted to the deities. And she would often ask me how I served Prabhupada. And I explained, and then I said, you bring in him his lunch, and you put the one chapati there, and then you go back in, make another chapati, bring it in, back and forth, back and forth. So a few days later, she says to me, Srutakirti, she says, guess what I'm doing? She says, I'm serving the deities their lunch. She says, but I just put one puri on each plate, then I go back and make fresh puris, and I bring them in, and I'm going in and out and serving them hot puris. I said, okay. So, of course, I know that's not a good idea. And I always, just like a little kid, I would just run into Prabhupada right away and say, Prabhupada, he's, yes. I'd say, Shalavati asked me about your lunch, and I said, now she's serving the deities puris like I serve you chapatis. Prabhupada just shook his head. He says, she can't do that. He said, once you bring in the boga, he says, you put it on the altar. He says, you leave so that they can eat. He said, you can't go back in and disturb them. And he would always say, why do they do? He said, you Americans, he would say, you Westerners, always changing. He says, everything. One day I brought in a sweet. It was, the daily sweet. So, of course, we had our daily sweets, gulab jamun, rasgulla, sandesh, like that. But here in Los Angeles, they started making some dried fruit, puffed rice, which came right out of the, who shot it through the cannon. It was those puffed rice in these things. Yeah, like that. Quaker. Anyway, these were the sweets they were making, of course, because it's very fast. It's nice, it's tasty, and it's fast. So I took the Mahaprasadam from the deities and I served Prabhupada's lunch, and I would always have sandesh, at least, on the plate. And then I put 2 of those. And I waited. So at the end of lunch, I come in and he said, what are these? I said, oh, that's Mahaprasadam, Prabhupada, from Rukmini Dwarkadish. He said, just see. He says, what is it? I said, well, they're the sweets they're making. He said, I've given you. He said, gulab jamun, rasgulla, sandesh. He said, these are the standard, he called them the standard sweets, he said. He said, why do they invent these things? He said, tell them. He said, make the proper. He said, make proper. He said, don't change things. So that was.
One little tiny story I want to tell. about offering to Krishna before offering to Prabhupada. The first time we toured Vrindavan, Prabhupada took us to Vrindavan, and we actually did a walking tour around Vrindavan. And one of the most intriguing things for me was we walked by a jalebi wala, and he stopped, and he said, "Garam jalebi, eh?" So he immediately got jalebis from the jalebi wala and ate them, and we all got them, we all ate them, and it was not like he said we need to do anything special, and that was because I think we were in Vrindavan, and also because, of course, he wanted them, so that was all okay.
What if the ants were in Vrindavan and the ants were in Florida? They're different ants.
It just depends whose lesson has to learn what.
But maybe it was because the ants were in Vrindavan.
Maybe.
But there was always the lessons. And it was always whatever you said, the lesson was it's the opposite. There was no right or wrong, you're always wrong. That was, I was describing in the airplane, and it's different. We all had, I talked to 3 of us, had the same experience in an airplane. Prabhupada listening to the sitar and tabla music, the instrumental, nice Indian classical music. You're in the plane, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and he looks at you, do you like it? So me, see, she took she said pride, mine was the false humility. I'm trying to think, what is the right thing? This is Maya, it's gotta be Maya. But I always hesitate with an answer. See, I don't answer. Very nice, he says. It's very nice. Yes, Prabhupada, very nice.
My story is different. So we're sitting in the plane, and the music's playing. The sitar music. Same music. And I'm a musician. So I'm like, this is really good. But I didn't say anything. Then Prabhupada looked at me and he said, "It is very good, isn't it?" I said, "Yes." He said, "But it's Maya." I said, "Yes." He said, "But it's good, Maya." I said, "Yes, it is."
Speaking of insects, I have to tell a Prabhupada story which relates to bugs. So I was cooking for Prabhupada in Bombay. He had an apartment upstairs. This is when the Bombay temple in Juhu was still under construction. And I think it was 75, I want to say, something like that. Anyway, I had just finished serving Prabhupada and his godbrothers a meal that he really loved. And he had gone, and they had gone to go, they talked for a long time, and then he had gone to his room to take rest. And so I'm cleaning in the kitchen, and in Bombay they have no screens on the windows. At least our apartment didn't have a screen. And so this gigantic, like this big water bug, like it looked like a gigantic cockroach, but I think they call them water bugs, I don't know, flew in, and it just startled me because I was concentrating, and it basically kind of buzzed my head, and I did a kind of screech like, and suddenly Prabhupada rushes in the room, rushes in. I don't even know how he heard me. And he said, "Kaushalya, what is it?" I said, "It's a bug." And he said, "What?" I said, "A bug." He said, "What?" I said, "An insect." He said, "I don't understand." I said, "Well, by that time the bug had flown into his bathroom." So I said, "Come with me, I'll show you." So we walked into his bathroom, and there was the giant bug. And he said, "Oh, it's an animal. Don't cause it any harm."
Where's Nrsingananda with his questions?
He's back there.
Oh, okay.
When Srila Prabhupada expressed a liking or disliking for your preparation or offering, could you connect it to what you were thinking of while preparing the offering?
No. Yes.
Wait, can you elaborate?
Yeah, is this working? Yeah, okay. I was cooking for quite a while for Srila Prabhupada all around India, and everything was going really, really well. And he basically liked my cooking and would say good things about it. Well, could you, sorry, what was the question? Just repeat that once more. Was the cooking?
What were you thinking of while preparing the offering when he expressed a liking or disliking for your preparation?
Yeah. Actually, this is connected with Palika, the story. So, as I explained yesterday, I took over cooking at a certain point when Palika wasn't able to cook, so she was really Prabhupada's main cook, but somehow I ended up cooking for her about 2 months. We were in Mumbai, I can't remember exactly when, and Srila Prabhupada got very ill, very, very ill. And yeah, he wanted some specific things to eat, and I was starting to prepare the dishes, and all of a sudden there were all these other people in the kitchen which usually wasn't the case. I was usually the only one in the kitchen. All of a sudden there was like 3 or 4 other people, not even anyone I knew. There were Indian people in there that were preparing things for Prabhupada, some special medicine, this and that, and I got very, I got kind of disturbed, because usually I was like very focused on the cooking, and there wasn't other things around, but now there were all these people, and it was hard for me to concentrate as well as I usually was able to. Anyhow, I did the best I could, and I brought the prasadam into Srila Prabhupada, and this was the first time I really got yelled at by Srila Prabhupada. And he called me in a minute later, and he said, "The sabji is burnt. So long you have been cooking, and still you do not know. Where are your brains? You have no brains." And it was very heavy for me. I think some of the devotees here were used to getting yelled at more often by Srila Prabhupada, but I had a good run, and all of a sudden, and I started trying to defend myself, as you were saying about Srila Prabhupada. I got confused. There were all these people in the kitchen, and he didn't want to hear it. And a few minutes later, he called his servant in the kitchen, and he said, "Tomorrow Palika will cook." And I'll just get back to actually something before this. Yeah, as I said, I had been cooking for Prabhupada for a while, and then we came to Mumbai, and you were there, you were back. And I had gotten really attached to the cooking. And I actually had thought, should I ask Prabhupada or ask Palika if she wants to start cooking for Srila Prabhupada again? And I didn't, because I was so attached. At some point, I have it in my notes, Srila Prabhupada said, well, they're both attached to cooking for me, so they both should cook. I don't remember exactly when that happened, but at the time of this incident, I was like holding on to that service very tightly. And I think, the thing that happened was because I didn't do what I should have done. I should have said to Prabhupada, "Do you want Palika to start cooking again?" Or said something to her, but I was too attached. So I'm not sure if that's answering what you asked about.
It's not a requirement to answer exactly what I'm But I see Palika kind of chomping at the bit there. Would you like to add to that? Anything?
No, the only thing I'm going to add is I have great sympathy for her with everyone in the kitchen. And if anyone knew me, and I reminded Shroops, when she wanted to come learn to cook from me, Shruti Rupa, when she wanted to come and learn to cook with me. I said, you bring a pen, you bring paper, and you don't talk. And I said, anything you want to know, you write it down, and when I'm all done, and he's served, ask me your questions. And it was my rule, and it's, to this day, it's very difficult for me to cook and have stuff going on around. I like quiet. It's a meditation. And so that's what Shoops did. She came in with pen and paper, and then we'd talk after. So I can sympathize. It's very difficult, I think, when you really take it as a meditation and are focused.
I just add one little thing that happened after that. I was pretty devastated, and then I wasn't in the kitchen for about a week, and Palika was cooking again, and I'm not sure, maybe there were some other people cooking too, and then I thought, Srila Prabhupada is never going to forgive me for this, because his anger was so strong at the time. But then about a week later, Srila Prabhupada decided that he would cook himself, because sometimes that would increase his appetite, and his appetite wasn't very good then. He was quite ill, wasn't eating too much. So he went into the kitchen, and that day he invited me and Palika into the kitchen. I'm not sure, maybe you were there too. And he made a dish called Bhati Chachuri, and we all got to watch him make it. And at that point I felt like I've been forgiven.
That's what I saw, especially when I was in India or Vrindavan. Prabhupada would have very specific desires at times for what he wanted to eat. And it generally had to do with becoming stronger, more energetic. Everything was about his service, which basically was translating. So it was always how to feel the best to do service. So I have one story to show how extreme. It was in Vrindavan, 1974, in September, when he was very sick at that time. All of you will remember. He was for a month. It came to the point we were doing 24-hour kirtan in the temples for the very first time. And Prabhupada's bed, where it is now, was in the same place then in 1974. So I was his servant, and Kaladri was there, Devi Shakti was there, Jamuna Devi was there, and Prabhupada wasn't eating for weeks. Bhardraj Prabhu was there. So one evening, he was taking generally a little bit of orange every day. That was it. Would just suck the juice from an orange. And one evening, he rang the bell, and I came in. He was sitting on the bed, and he said, "I want you to make me upma." He said, "I think if you make me something I like, I have some appetite, I can start eating." He said, "So I want you to make upma." So right away, and everyone's right on the other side of Prabhupada's sitting room at the door, listening to every word that's being said, or trying to hear what Prabhupada's saying. So as soon as I opened the door, why do you ring the bell? What's he want? I said, "Prabhupada wants upma." And immediately Jamuna looked at me. She says, "I'll get started right away." I said, "Jamuna, Prabhupada said he wants me to make it. He likes the way I make upma." This was Prabhupada. I had nothing on any of these cooks, but for some reason, that's what he said. He said, "No." He said, because I said to him, I said, "Jamuna's here, I'll tell her." He said, "No, I want you to make it." He said, "I like the way you make upma." Now, I'm sure I've tasted Jamuna's cooking. There's no comparison. Anything I've made tastes anywhere near what she's prepared. But that's what he said. Now, what I find in the whole story as interesting as Prabhupada is Jamuna. She just looked at me. She says, "What can I do?" That was Jamuna. She had no ego, no false ego at all. She immediately just surrendered. Prabhupada once. "What can I do?" She said, "How can I help?" And I'm looking at it. I said, "Jamuna, I don't even know what's here," because I hadn't cooked at all since I've been there. So she said, she opened up her trunk, And this is Vrindavan, 1975. There's nothing. In the trunk she had dehydrated peas. Like, she says, I have dehydrated peas. All right, we got started. She hydrated the peas. We made upma for Prabhupada together. Then I went in a little katuri on a silver plate, and I put it on the bed, offered obeisances, and left. So we were all on the other side of the door, just waiting. Just waiting. Is he eating? Is Prabhupada eating? Then he rang the bell, and I go in, and I offer obeisances. As soon as I already know what happened, I get up and I see, looked like he moved it around, like the 5-year-old that doesn't like what he's eating. You know, I see so much is in there, and he looked right at me. He said, "First class." He said, "I want you to know it was first class." He said, "And I thought, if you made something that I liked," he said, "I would develop appetite." He said, "But I have no appetite. But I want you to know," he said, "I did taste," he said, took some." He said, "It's very nice." So again, his concern, it wasn't even about him. Now he's thinking about me, that I was disappointed that he didn't eat anything. Over and over, this Srila Rupa said, we were just there out of love. When people say, "Oh, it must have been so hard," nothing was hard except our own maybe desires in the background. Being with him was just always more than wonderful because he loved you.
And he encouraged us to care for each other and to be kind to one another. Prabhupada was so loving and so kind, and he wanted us to do that with each other.
Okay, here's another question. Reading the Lilamrita, we never came across an instance where cooking was done in oil. I would read that puri, sabji, and everything was made in ghee. Is that true? Where was the ghee obtained from? Was oil never a part of cooking dishes during Prabhupada's time?
I can tell you where my ghee came from. It came in big bins from Australia. I had a trunk full of mortar and pestle, so butter, I brought ghee, everything.
Every festival, the devotees from New Zealand and Australia would bring ghee. But
This is how Madhvisa Prabhu paid his BBT bill. Right, Rameshwar Prabhu? By sending ghee to India for the devotees. So the devotees had nice cow ghee to take. When the opening festival at Krishna Balaram Mandir, Prabhupada brought in all his GBCs. What was your service, Rameshwar? Were you there for that? Yeah. Okay. He was in the treasury department. Bhavananda was in charge of cleaning. I'm not sure who was in, Jayatirtha probably was in charge of deities. Another devotee was in charge of seeing that the devotees got milk prasadam every day, cow milk. Anyway, just as far as cooking for the deities, this is what was so important at that time. So ghee was going from Australia to India for the deities and for the devotees. Big, they're the big metal tubs.
They make it like that in Australia.
The whole movement was getting their ghee in the 70s then, yes.
Well, was anything cooked in mustard seed oil?
One time, Tamal Krishna in Calcutta, because his sister, Prabhupada's sister, was always cooking in mustard oil, Tamal Krishna went into Prabhupada. And he said, "Prabhupada," he said, "why do they cook?" He said, "This mustard oil, you say mustard oil is for the outside of the body and ghee is for the inside." He said, "Why do they cook in mustard oil?" Prabhupada said, "Oh," he said, "very tasty."
Actually, once Prabhupada, late at night you do foot massage for Prabhupada before he would go to sleep, and leg massage. So it's very late, and sometimes you would almost be falling asleep. But anyway, you do massage on Prabhupada's legs, so he decides to say something to me, I guess to wake me up, and he said, "You know, fish cooked in mustard oil is very good."
Pishima, his sister.
And I said, "Prabhupada, how do you know that? You never ate fish." He said, "I have heard."
I was just going to say Pishima's sister, Pishima, who was Prabhupada's sister, always cooked with mustard oil. She believed in it. And when his two Bengali godbrothers came to visit him in Bombay, the time I was telling you about, he asked me to cook in mustard oil because he said, we Bengalis, we like our mustard oil.
His sister, when told not to cook in it because he couldn't digest, he said he can digest nails if he wants to. So she had full faith in Srila Prabhupada being a transcendental personality. She had no question.
Wasn't it with you, did you say that we all went somewhere with Prabhupada to eat, and you were amazed, he knew exactly how many porridge you ate, Brahmana ate, but he said, no wonder you're sick. Didn't they cook in oil, the guest? So tell him.
Was it at the Manor? That was one of our first going to life members' houses. Shiradakshai, right? Was it Karuna Dakshai, Shiradakshai, that whole family. So there's a photo of it, actually. You can see Prabhupada at the head of the room there, sitting down, and there's about 20 of us in there. So Prabhupada's disciples, we were generally very eager to go out for feast because they were always cooking, puris, halava. It was like a Sunday feast. So it was announced, and Prabhupada did it. He was encouraging the family, which of course resulted very nicely. And before we got there, it was already, the rumor was racing around the manor, they cook in oil. This was like, it was sinful. They cook in oil. That's how you said it. It was like a dirty word. They cook in oil. And so then we're all attending the feast, and Pradyumna's there, myself, Shyamasundar, all the devotees at the manor, and Prabhupada's sitting comfortably. So then we get back to the manor, and after about 10 minutes, the bell rings. I go in the room, offer obeisances. Beautiful room at Bhaktivedanta Manor. And Prabhupada says, everyone enjoyed the feast? That was his setup. Everyone enjoyed, he said? Yes, Prabhupada. Of course, he knew already. Even he's jogging my memory because I'm not thinking anything. So Prabhupada loved to play with us. I know he loved to play with me all the time. And he could spend 10 minutes being completely deadpan. And when you look back 20, 30, 40 years later, you think, boy, he was just really making a fool of me, You're teasing, playing. He was playing. So everyone had a good time? Yes, Prabhupada. I said, some of the devotees, they're saying now they don't feel well. Their stomachs are upset. And I said, because it was cooked in oil. And Prabhupada goes, He said, I said, Pradyumna. I said, Pradyumna told me he's sick. He said, he ate 10 puris. And then I said, well, Prabhupada, I knew they were cooking in oil. I said, so I was very careful. I said, I hardly ate anything. He said, yeah, that's true. He said, but you ate 4 puris. So he always knew everything through whatever agency he wanted to, if he wanted to. And so it was just, it was always wonderful.
In South India, during one of those 3 times a day feast things, I started to notice after about maybe 3 or 4 days that he was starting to stop us, well, especially me. And he was doing it very subtly. Like there was this one chutney, I forgot what it's called now, but a tamarind chutney. It was so good. So I'm just eating, and then he looked at me and he goes, like that. And then he started doing that more. It was just... So he was policing what we were doing because he saw that this was too many days, 3 times a day, too many days. He has to watch out. He's going to lose his entire crew. So he was very aware of what we were eating.
Well, in that vein, did Prabhupada give any instructions to use or not to use maida, baking soda, baking powder, artificial colors, or agents in cooking?
Those weren't part of the preparation, so it didn't even come up. We didn't bake we didn't put food color in things. He didn't eat baked things. He had required sandish.
If something had to rise, it was
In the
done
West.
with yogurt and fermentation, like, what is it called, dokla?
Dough clothes things.
That's for rising from fermentation. Or like the kachori recipe, that attains it from the yogurt. So it was not done by artificial means.
We didn't have refrigerator or ovens, or there was none of that in Prabhupada's cooking in India. In the West, the devotees, he would have cookies made and he'd give them to the kids and hand out, but it was not something Prabhupada ate.
Well, did Prabhupada say anything about how many times we can fry in the same ghee before tossing it out?
I never heard that.
He told me a whole thing about how Indians make feasts. It was just before Janmashtami. So it's all done with a wok with ghee. One wok, ghee, multiple preparations. So you start off putting the ghee in, you maybe cook a sabji, put that aside in a pot. Same ghee, put in another vegetable, put it aside in a pot. Another vegetable, put it aside in a pot. Then you put more ghee in, you start frying up things, maybe puris, maybe kachoris, maybe so on, until it's quite far down and you're done with all of that. Then you take the rest of it, you make halava. Yep. It was in Bombay just before a festival. To explain how well they knew what they were doing and how good it was, and how they didn't waste anything and how efficient they were.
And he also, I went through a spell where Prabhupada ate with no ghee. No ghee. He went through there was a time with his health, remember that? When I was
No ghee,
cooking
no
with
salt.
no ghee.
He said impossible.
And then
no salt.
always the paste masalas. Went through a spell like that.
And how did Srila Prabhupada break a fast? With what kind of prasad did he break a fast?
Regular prasadam.
He didn't have,
As
did he
soon
have
as
any
class
rules
was
like
over, after class, he would walk upstairs, sit down, and have breakfast. We didn't discuss times at those
No,
times.
I think he's talking about like Janmashtami and things like that.
Oh.
any fast will do?
Well, that was from Ekadasi, so John Mastami.
Yeah. I remember in Bombay at least, in Vrindavan also, but once he was sick on Janmashtami and the other time he wasn't. But, okay, so we just had all the maha brought in. He had all the maha in front of him at after midnight.
In other words, he didn't follow any protocol of only fruits after a fast, for a few hours,
No.
and this type of.
No, well, the times I was there, I mean, I was there multiple Janmashtamis and Mayapur, Gaur-Purnima, and it was always pretty much similar. Except when he was sick, then it was different.
All right. We're not going to take questions yet from the audience. I'm going to do that later. So I want to ask a few more questions and see where we go with it. So Prabhupada may have had more than one favorite preparation, but in your experiences, what was his favorite preparation?
He really liked sukta.
I was going to say shukta.
I have a story about Shukta.
He also liked badam sandesh, almond sandesh. Of course, he loved jalebis.
He loved bitter.
He loved kachoris.
He loved bitter. He loved bitter and he loved sweet.
He told me he loved daiwada.
You know, he loved anything that was good.
That was prepared well.
I think he basically loved good food.
He enjoyed
Prepared
Italy,
well.
Italy and coconut chutney. He loved it when I make that.
Also, someone told the story yesterday, what I like. Nanda Kumar also tried that. Nanda Kumar, who would have been wonderful if he was here. Amazing cook, wonderful servant, everything. And he was introducing Prabhupada to healthy eating, salads, more salads. He gave him sprouts. So he had done a very special thing one day, and he gave it to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said it was very good. He liked it very much. So, of course, Nanda was excited, and the next day, I went in right before lunch, Prabhupada, so I can prepare everything again. And Prabhupada said, no, he said, from my whole life, I've been eating what I want. It was never going to stop. One of the stories he told me when he was a child was in the evening, and he wanted puris, and his mother complained and said, no, it's too late. She said, I'll make you muri, puffed rice. So again, no, I want puris. And he said, my mother was insisting, it's very late, I'll give you puffed rice. So again, Prabhupada would always say things 3 times. So they said, I want puris. He said, then my father said, if he wants puris, give him puris. And then he looked at me and said, perhaps my father knew. And that was the end of that. That's as far as he would lead you on to that type of statement. And he said it to me a few times, perhaps my father knew. Because he speaks of how much love there was from his father and his mother, but so much attachment he had to his father, to being with him. He talked about walking, going shopping with him.
Can I tell a story about Prabhupada's father?
Can I also?
Go.
Okay, go. This is quick. In Vrindavan 75, I was cooking with Diva Shakti, and one night in the roof, Prabhupada was eating when I brought up the evening meal. Prabhupada said, I did not like chapatis till I was 22 years old. He said, I only liked puris. And he said, when he was young, he told his mother he wanted puris, and she had chapatis, and he wouldn't eat them, so she sent him to bed. So when his father came home later, I think it was about 11 o'clock or something, in the evening, she told him, your son went to bed without supper because he refused to eat chapatis. And then the father told his wife, go make puris, and he woke up Prabhupada and told him to come and eat the puris. And Prabhupada then, when he was sitting in his rocking chair, and he was feeling quite pleased, and he was rocking, and he said, I was very fortunate. He said, 2 kindest men in all the world were very dear to me. He said, my Guru Maharaj and my father. He said, he was rocking, he says, but if it wasn't for my mother, he said, I wouldn't be the great man that I am today. Because his mother was very strict, and then his father was very loving.
So one day, I brought Prabhupada a fruit plate, and you know how in India you have a stainless steel or silver, in this case it was silver, with the little katoris. And he said to me, marble is better than silver or gold. So I made a mental note, and I went back to Calcutta. Prabhupada was traveling around, and I raised enough money, to get him a whole set of marble plates with the little marble bowls and everything. And so I was very happy that I did that, and I was going to surprise him when he came back. So he came back to Calcutta, and I brought him his fruit plate on a marble tray with little marble bowls. And he said, oh, marble plates. He said, these are white marble. And my heart sunk, because I suddenly thought I got the wrong kind. He said, my father and I used to eat on black marble. And I was like, oh no. And then he said, but I have so many white fathers now, so this is very good.
Speaking of Prabhupada and his father and his family, there was one time, and I think was it in Bhubaneswar, where was it, where all 3 of us were there so Prabhupada, after he had finished and I was collecting everything, he had me sit down, and this was a very sweet time because he talked to me about Pishima, and he told me the GBC, they don't want her. He was very perplexed because he wanted her, and he wanted her to be taken care of, and he wanted her to be housed. And he said, but the GBC, they don't understand. And it was just a time when he shared with me, which is very dear to me to this day, his love for his sister, but how he had to sacrifice that, you know, for the what he felt was a greater good, but not of his desire.
I remember more of that story he told you, if you want me to elaborate.
Oh, go right ahead, she remembers more. Good thing I told her things.
We were like glue.
I know we were.
When she came out, she'd said what Prabhupada had told her, and there was a few of the sannyasis that wanted her to go. And it was back and forth for a few days, to go, not to go, and then finally on this day, he said she should go back to her son in Calcutta. He said, otherwise, I'll always be worrying about her.
Yes.
He said there's natural affection between brother and sister, and I'll be thinking, has she fallen down? Has she eaten?
That's right.
Who is taking care of her? He said, I am sannyasi. He said, so I shouldn't be having to worry like that. So it's probably best she goes back to her son.
Did we hear that story from a Hare Krishna about the Shukta?
Well, this is on the other side of the Chapati story, but that's okay. When we came to Mayapur in the end of 75, beginning of 76, Prabhupada had been saying he was having a very hard time being enthusiastic to eat, and that he required more encouragement to eat. So he said, you're going to have to learn how to cook Bengali style. So he sent me down to the kitchen to learn from Pishima. So she was sitting on the floor on this little seat and had to walk in front, and so she knew it was her responsibility to teach me how to cook for her brother, Srila Prabhupada. And it was very interesting. She didn't speak a word of English, so everything was like she would hold it and then show it, and then you have to say yes, and she throws it in. And then she takes a little of this and shows it, and you go yes, and she throws it in. She was very good at it. I mean, for somebody who didn't speak English, she was a spectacular teacher. She holds it and shows it to you. Go like this, do this, like this, and like that. I mean, even grinding up the sesame and putting that in. And so, two of the preparations she taught me were shak and shukta. And the way she made the shukta, if I can remember properly, it was with bitter melon. That's what makes it the bitter. And then there were many other vegetables in it. I cannot remember all of them. I have it in a cookbook somewhere. And you put many vegetables in there. I think there was a little potato in there, and there was a little bit of spinach in there, and a little bit of other green vegetables in there. And then you cook it for a while, spread the middle, then you take the spices that she had gone like this, and that, you put them in the middle, cook them up. The Bengali spices, I think there were basically like 6 that were used in different proportions. And then you fry it together and then add water. And then she always ground up sesame seeds with this little marble grinder, and then when they were soaked. And then I forgot she called it poshtak or something.
Poppy seeds.
There you go.
Poppy seeds.
And then you throw it in, mix it all up. That was the shukta. And the shak she made basically in the same way, except that she used body. Am I got it right? These hard dal things. So the shak was made the same way with spinach, and then she would break these up, put those in, and with the spices, put it all together. So I learned from her for about 3 days how to do that, and then she said, meaning you, and I was me. He said, you. So then I started cooking. I was scared to death because obviously I'm in the presence of a master, and the critic is going to be the supreme master here. So then I did it, and I made my first shot at it, brought it upstairs, and Prabhupada ate most of it. And I said, well, he said it was all right. So then this is not one of those lessons though, but anyway, he said this is all right. So then I went down, and the next day I really concentrated. And one of the nice Bengali ladies there, I don't really remember her name now. She watched over me and corrected me once or twice. And then I really worked at it and brought it up. And he started eating, and I was chewing my fingernails. And he turned to me and he said, you are the first one to actually learn how to cook Bengali. Yeah, and 2 weeks later I was off. But he, at that point, very, very, very much wanted Bengali cooking. And I think that that demonstrates the way in which he was in Mayapur. It's very close to his home. It was Bengali cooking. He wanted to feel that what he had in his youth, because it rekindled his digestion, rekindled his enthusiasm to eat, and everything went much better in all regards.
Kishori, we haven't heard much from you. Kishori, we haven't heard much from you. Would you like to add something, Kishori?
A story?
Oui.
In the very beginning that I was cooking in Vrindavan, Harikesh Prabhu was there. He had been so nice to me always. He was very, very gentle, Prabhu Maharaj at that time. So, I had only fire and no tap water, buckets. It was very difficult. There was no fan in the little kitchen, you remember?
Yeah.
And so I was coming from Amsterdam, where I was cooking for 150 people a day, hippies, where Prabhupada came actually. And he saw that I was very hard working, cooking, and he told me that's the day that I understood how Prabhupada loved me. I felt he loved her so much. He said before to leave, Kishori, you continue to give so much prashadam, but don't give too much philosophy, because they are so intoxicated that they may aggress you. So I felt that Prabhupada loved us first. Something like this, like you have your child. Of course he is first, although you may like others. So that was very, very nice. So when I started to cook for Srila Prabhupada in that kitchen, I wanted to make so many nice preparations for him. And so the plate was with so many katoris. So one day, Harikesh Prabhu came and said to me, Srila Prabhupada is calling you. So I came, and Srila Prabhupada in a severe, how can I say in English, hard voice, grave voice, like chastising for me. So Srila Prabhupada said to me, "What is this?" He said, "You make so many preparation. So when I start one preparation, 2, 3, I come at the end, it is cold. So what is the use?" But very strong voice. And I'm very new, close to him. So I'm like shaky, and hurt. So I displeased him. So he said, "Don't do that anymore. Don't cook so many preparation." So I have never been qualified, you see. And I knew I was not qualified. So I came back in the kitchen, and in my heart, my disqualification, I don't know what to say in English, came up, these terrible things. So I start to feel, but I'm working so hard. It is so hard. And so and he doesn't appreciate. But then by Krishna's mercy, I thought, what is this coming in my heart so bad? And I heard like a voice in my heart saying, it's real, saying, what do you want? You want to learn how to serve? You want to be a servant? Or you want to be a good cook? Like this, show your cooking, something. So I remember I went on the floor and offered my obeisances and asked for forgiveness, because I wanted so much to be with Srila Prabhupada and learn how to become a servant. And I could see I was so disqualified. So then what happened is that, young, little fanatical, I promised to myself that I will never make something else that he was asking me. No one thing. It became like frightening to me than to make something else than that he wanted. So I was cooking like this, very like Baka. And okay, so one day we had to go to Makhana in Jaipur, after Jaipur in Rajasthan. And my husband asked to Srila Prabhupada, when we are going out like this, what to do for eating. So, because it is very warm, we cannot bring prasad, it will be spoiled. So Rabbi in Gunanava actually asked, so Prabhupada, can we eat in a restaurant? And actually, there was a restaurant in Jaipur, I don't know if one of you remember, which was called LMB. And it was like the top dream. Because at that time in Vrindavan, maybe Palika remembers, she was there when it was very poor. You stay there. So we used to eat cauliflower for so many weeks sometime, or pumpkin, we had, So LMB was like a dream. So Srila Prabhupada said, yes. So what you do, you go there quickly, you eat quickly, you pay quickly, and you leave very quickly. So I was of the trip. So we went there, and so we eat I don't know, as quick, but... And then we went out, and in front of LMB, there is a counter with all kind of sweets and again, namkins. Different ones, with flat fries, with noodles, with puff fries. So I was staring like this. And it was like a scene, you know. I made a big scene for me, that I asked some, I pay quickly, and I eat some. I could not resist. But it was like a scene, you know. I was betraying Prabhupada. Oh, it was so good. So immediately I thought, oh, this Prabhupada have to test. It is so good. Okay, so we made our whole trip for the marble, you know, for the temple and all that. Then we come back. And Srila Prabhupada arrived. So I had a big dilemma in my mind. What can I do? Prabhupada have to test this. It is too good. I know he will love it so much. But I can't. Because I cannot do anything. He don't tell me to cook. So I was there in the kitchen like this. And still I made it. So I remember that this is called Chedwa. Chedwa? Yeah? Okay. I made it even better than they did. I will tell you after. So I made it, and when I made it, I didn't know where to put it. I wanted him to eat, and also I don't wanted him to see it. Contradictory. I was so afraid to get chastised, you know. So still, I put it. So you came. Maybe you don't remember, but after a few minutes, Harikesh Prabhu came, and he said to me, quick, quick. He was always telling me, quick, quick. Oh, if I tell a story about you, what you did to me. So, quick, quick, Prabhupada is calling you. I said, oh my God, I'm finished. So I came, and Srila Prabhupada gravely, he said, what is this? And I'm very sorry, I think I'm a great liar, so I lie. So immediately, because he said, you know, he told us quickly, you pay, you go, you don't enjoy, you know. So I said, oh, it's bonified, Srila Prabhupada. Bonified? Prabhupada said. I said, yes. I said, I learned this from Govindaji temple. Oh, Prabhupada said. So then I went back, make some chapati. And Harikesh came back and said, Prabhupada is calling you again. So I came back, and he said, Srila Prabhupada said, how you made this? Actually, it is so good. So sit down. So I sit down, and Srila Prabhupada asked me, please tell me how to make this. So I could not believe that I was sitting and I was teaching Srila Prabhupada a recipe. And that was after I was thinking I was tricking him, and he was giving me a recipe without knowing. And now I was sitting. So all this story was as the link, you see. So I was telling him how I made it. So then he said, it is so good. Call Arisori. So Arisori came, and Arisori, he did not like so much to cook. You remember? Oh my God. So Prabhupada told Arisori, so now, this is so good, Arisori, you have to go in the kitchen immediately with Kishori, and you have to learn. So Arisori gave me a black look, you know. So he said, because now I want this every day. Everywhere I go in the world, I want to have this preparation. I was like this. And I was very simple girl. You know, not very, how can I say? I did not go to school so much. I was always kicked out of school. So I was very simple. It was just love. And Prabhupada fed me with so much love. He could see I needed so much. Whatever we need, he gave. He gave me so much love. So I thought, wow, I am going everywhere with Prabhupada, all over the world, just like those big devotees. And then I felt that actually it was a link, that when Prabhupada chastised me, I surrendered. You know, I had so bad, like the Prabhu was telling the other day, trash, I think you said trash in the heart. Trash, bad things in my heart. And I surrender. And I take it as a mercy of Prabhupada that he chastised me. Actually, at that time, what I remember, whatever Prabhupada said to one of us, it will be mercy. I remember that even if he chastised or not, oh, so much mercy, so much mercy. We appreciate each other's mercy, isn't it? Prabhu was also very, very nice, Prabhu. Always gentle, always welcome to Prabhupada. Always, never say, oh, don't come here, don't do this. Somehow, make an arrangement, you feel so much sweetness, you know. So, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hari Bol. Shori Devi Dasi ki.
I don't think it's time, otherwise I could tell a very nice story with Harikesh. So, but I don't know if it's there.
Let's save, as they say, always leave the audience wanting more.
Okay. Hari Bol. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So I have a question for the group from devotees outside this room. It is said that in the early days of ISKCON, Prabhupada used to insist that devotees feast even on Ekadasi. What was his expectation during his later days? In other words, how did Srila Prabhupada observe Ekadasis?
The usual way.
I made carrot halva, peanuts and raisins, and then potato, vegetable, things like that. We didn't have all these, Ekadasi type grains that we use now. So it was simple, but there was I always make carrot halva and peanuts and raisins.
Well, we had kutu, atta, and
Singara. We used to make puris, we used to make
Paratha,
arbi.
See, that's the difference between how I
Sabudana
cooked
kheer.
and how they cooked.
And also, we were once having a courtesy lunch at the Birla's house. And the cook of the Birla, it was the eldest Birla, and his cook made these what do you call it, sabudana? Sabudana
Puris,
lemon,
poppers.
no balls.
Wow.
And they were so good that Prabhupada ate a lot of them, and then he sent me down in the kitchen to learn from the cook. These Sabudana balls, they were just, what do you call it? You soak the tapioca and it gets bigger. And
Oh, was that, is that, it starts with an F.
Try to speak in the mics, everybody.
It starts with an F. It's with those same sabudana type things.
Has lemon in it.
Hurry, hold that mic closer.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, I
actually
don't
a name
remember
for
enough, but it was really, he really
Starts with
loved
an
those.
F.
Yeah, you probably made it better.
Duke Tapan, can you check the levels on Hari's mic?
I know in 77 when Prabhupada was very ill, and it was Ekadasi, we were in Mayapur, he wanted to observe, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj was talking him out of it. You're sick, the Shastra is 80, after 80 years old, you don't have to follow, you don't need to be following this. And Prabhupada was saying that he wanted to, but Goswami Maharaj actually won over.
I'm sorry, can you give some authoritative reference for that? Because
That's what
80
he
doesn't
said.
seem so far away right now.
What, Tamal?
I say, can you give some authoritative reference? Because 80 doesn't seem so far away at this point.
We are
Well, the
nearing
best
it.
thing is that we follow. I mean, we're not Prabhupada, but the thing is, Prabhupada was so ill. The only thing he was taking was a chapati made with paneer, and then it would blow, and that Kaviraj was only having him take the blown part. So he was taking that with sandesh and then some milk, and that's all he was eating. That was his full diet. So when he was saying he was going to fast, it was like, what was he going to eat? So Tamal Krishna Maharaj was telling Prabhupada he didn't have to follow. Otherwise, it was just
Children
normal.
and old people.
Children
Children
and
and
old
old people don't have to do the fasting.
What's the definition of old?
So
I'll leave that to you.
Okay. Actually, we're going to have a blast from the past for 5 minutes at the end of this session. We're actually going to hear and see from Tamal Krishna Goswami. But that's going to be just in a few minutes. We have just a few minutes to open up the questions to some of our...
Could I, because I've been asked by 4 or 5 people to finish the story about the chapatis.
Absolutely.
Okay, I didn't. No, it's okay. It was like this, that after South Africa, when we came to, after this horrible experience with chapatis, we arrived in Bombay. And so I had to make good chapatis because my life was on the line. And in the kitchen in Bombay, it was being renovated at the time. So all there was just one burner on the ground, and there was basically nothing else in the kitchen. It was just chaos in there. So I had to make chapatis. So I went in and did my best and put the chapati on the plate and tried to blow it up. It didn't blow up. I threw it out, did it again, didn't blow up. I threw it out, did it again, blew up a little bit, maybe. This one blew up a little bit, maybe, so I brought them in. And Prabhupada said, "What is this?" I said, "It's the best I could get out of that stove." And he said, "Oh, it's the stove's fault." I said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, nobody can make good chapatis on that stove." He said, "Nobody." I said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, nobody can make good chapatis on that stove. It's just the gas is too low, it's just..." He got up. He said, "Come with me." Walked in the kitchen, sat down in front of the stove. I'm right behind him, this far away. He takes the dough, he He's looking at me. He rolls a ball, squashes it, makes a perfect, he was great at chapatis, made a perfect round chapati, threw it on the plate, cooked it, flipped it, put it on the stove, the gas. It didn't blow up. So, I'm sitting just this far away, and I'm trying my hardest, but I smirked. I went, I really tried hard. I felt vindicated. The gods vindicated me. Prabhupada looked at me with a look that just burned. He grabbed another bit of dough, rolled it up, squished it down, just like that. Rolled the thing like this, threw it on the plate, cooked it, put it on the stove. It blew up perfectly. He picked it up in the tongs, threw it at my nose, and bounced it right off. Looked at me, stood up triumphantly, and walked out of the room. And I was sitting there laughing my brains out. Best thing that ever happened.
Just one second, because I did not finish. When Srila Prabhupada came back from going around the world in Bombay, so I came to cook for him. It was at least 2 months, at least, maybe a little more. Then I come in the room, offer my obeisances to him, and Srila Prabhupada said, "Hari sorry, he's not making the shelra as good as you make. Hari sorry, come here." Go immediately in the kitchen with Kishori and learn again how to make that preparation. So Prabhupada came back after so long, and immediately he remembered like this. So Hari sorry was not happy at all with me. I was.
So, we have a few minutes. I promised I'd take a few questions from the assembled Vaishnavas. So who would like to not make a comment? Not make a comment. We have comments here. Please make a question and make it very short and contrite.
I've been told that Prabhupada liked paratha and burfi at night when he would go to bed, before he'd go to bed. Was that very often?
Depends. You had to ask him every night what he wanted. At least I did.
Yes.
I always had to ask what he wanted, and it varied.
Evening time was his choice always.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always,
paratha, sometimes
I always
not.
thought he wanted sandesh, not burfi.
I've never heard burfi
I never
at
heard
night.
of burfi.
I never made burfi.
Yeah, it was sandesh.
Sandesh,
I only
yes.
did Bengali.
Sandesh
Paratha
was
and
his
sandesh,
go-to.
or puris and sandesh.
He didn't consider it a sweet, it was a tonic. You know, he would call you 1 o'clock in the morning while he's translating, give me a piece of sandesh. It was his, that's how I saw it for him. It was like taking an energizer.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
It is, right. So yes.
Okay, the Sandesh has it. Next question.
Today I'm going to try to make parathas this afternoon. It was a very simple plain paratha, so I'm going to be doing that this afternoon, hopefully.
I'll have the sandesh.
I was just wondering, when any kind of emergency or time when Srila Prabhupada had, let's say, a hired Bengali cook that cooked for him also. And
I didn't quite understand.
He wants to know, did Prabhupada ever
Hire a Bengali.
hire a Bengali to cook for him?
A devotee.
I never.
Not in my experience.
Mine.
I know Gargamuni had a Marwari cook in Calcutta
Shantilal.
temple. Yeah, he was excellent.
It was excellent. But
know if Prabhupada ate. Would he
No,
come
he
out?
didn't.
No,
And
so-
Gargamuni always used to try to get Prabhupada to eat Shantilal's fulkas.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's another story. We'll leave another day.
I'm going to ask my own question, put something to bed maybe. Which one of you saw Prabhupada eat chocolate?
I did. More than once.
Calcutta, K.C. Das,
He
chocolate
said chocolate
sandesh.
sandesh was the
Chocolate
best sandesh.
I used,
I think we made chocolate.
his sister
sandesh,
would
didn't
bring, whenever she came, she would bring a box of sweets from K.C. Das, and she would bring a few Misti Dahi.
Mishti dahi.
Mishti Dahis. And when you first taste them, then you realize you haven't had anything,
No.
you haven't had anything proper yet.
The best sweet in the world.
So they would sit in Prabhupada's room on the plate. So one day I went in there and the ants were all over his sweets. So that was a great opportunity that I tried to seize. No, I didn't do any thumping. I went in, I said, Prabhupada, there's all these ants on your sweets. He said, it's okay, they don't eat very much. He saw right through my wanting to eat all of them. But yes, there was no,
Yeah,
like
we
you
were-
say, there was
we
the,
were at a
the
home-
kaju,
But then we started putting it in the dish of water.
that's what he said. He said you'd make a moat. He said you just turn the katuri upside down in a plate with water and you put the sweets on top and then no ants.
We were living in the home of Bhagavad Jariwala in Surat, and they would feed us like royalty. They were very, very kind. We stayed at their home. And more than once actually, they brought chocolate ice cream for our dessert. And I remember sitting next to a brahmachari, I don't remember which one, who said to leaned over to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, it's chocolate. I thought we don't eat chocolate. And he said, eat it. And that was it.
We, one day, going from Australia to Fiji, I think I mentioned it the other day, we arrived at Fiji at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were observing the Kadasi, but they had prepared prasadam for all of us because it was a long flight. So, of course, we were immediately said, Prabhupada, there's a Kadasi, and they've made all this greens. He said, sit down, take prasadam. So that was, Prabhupada would always say,
He was very
common
practical.
sense. Prabhupada was do the needful, and, just Krishna consciousness is common sense.
He was intensely practical.
Yes. When I spilt the mustard oil on the floor giving him massage one day, he made me take that mustard oil and he showed me how to do it himself. And it's a long story. But anyway, he said, go get a katuri. So I got a katuri, I ran back in. He said, now do like me. And he just stuck his hand, it was a shiny floor, the manor, stuck his hand and started scraping it into the katuri. So he did that for a few minutes and he looked at me, he said, now massage me with that oil. So it was the oil off of the floor. As I'm massaging him, I'm picking off pieces of dust and things, but he was making a point as well, even with that.
Not to waste.
Yeah, just couple tablespoons of mustard oil.
Hare Krishna. I have a question in that, okay, now I see what you guys are putting up with. I've heard many of you mention notes, things that you have written down somewhere besides here. I was wondering if you would consider collaboration, putting it together and creating, even if it's a digital, and sharing that with us, because it sounds like a lot of really valuable nectar.
Well, we've talked about that, and the thing is, we all have notes, but there's no measurements. We just wrote what,
And
is
it's in
moving.
Hindi.
There's a lot of Hindi, Bengali, but I have considered it. I thought maybe I just mimeograph what I have, but then again, it's not, there's no measurements. So it's not tested, and because half of it just jogs from our own personal memories. But there is some value to it, and because there's a lot of things that when you write at the bottom of it, Prabhupada liked this very much, Prabhupada said this, or Prabhupada said that. And I have, like I said, I mentioned I have Jamunas, so, and Dina had told me to please, when you do yours, include, here with Jamunas, and then I often thought Palika, that we could do a whole combination. And then Jamuna had asked me also at one point to include Pishima to what we'd learned from her, so it may still happen. I just don't know how or when.
During periods when Srila Prabhupada was healthy and eating, I guess what you'd have to say is normally, how spicy heat did he prefer? Any at all? None? Medium? You know, in Thai restaurants they ask you 1 to 10. You know, reasonable is usually about a 3. Just wondering if any info on that.
What'd you say, Palika? It wasn't real hot, spicy.
No, there was heat. I think compared to American standard, it would be hot. But it wasn't an Indian hot. It wasn't an Indian hot.
It was
American standard hot, but not an Indian hot. I mean, I cooked with green chilies, always.
But then didn't you always also put some whole green chilies on his plate and then he could dip?
Not always, just when it was the timing that he asked for that. But it was probably a touch over medium, I would tend to say.
What about you, Shudakirti?
I cooked nice American prasadam. He never told me do like this, do like that. Other than show me something in particular he wanted me to cook. He never said, use
But
this
with
kind
your
of
heat,
spice.
the chilies, did you put much or little?
No, little.
I don't remember putting much.
No, not much at all.
When we were eating with other Indian families, I could tell you it was hot.
Really hot.
It was really hot. And I mean, it was like almost too hot for me to take, and Prabhupada had no problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it just depended on who was cooking. But he seemed to be very able to take a lot of heat when he was, when we first went to India. I was shocked because we'd be at someone's house and I nearly couldn't eat it. It was so hot.
And I did not use, a rare time that I would ever use a red chili. It was always green.
Me too.
Rare with red.
But as far as Ekadasi preparations, the Sabudana, there were always Sabudana poppers, Sabudana khichdi was being made. This is, like you said, but that's what I remember was a Sabudana khichdi, Sabudana poppers, and Sabudana kheer as well for the sweet. So they were also some of the preparations.
And I never did any of those.
We learned wonderful Ekadasi cooking at C.L. Bajoria's. It's my favorite to this day. I used to make him curd patties, which had fresh green chili in it, dhanya pata, and then tomato chutney. And he loved them.
Yum.
Shri Rupa, you used to tell me that in the Bengali cooking, for example, Pishima used a lot of mustard seeds she would soak and grind, and then Harikesh is saying when he learned Bengali style, it was sesame seed that is soaked and put in there. So is it either or both that's used traditionally in Bengali cooking?
I never used
two different things.
Sesame with her like that.
They're two different things.
They weren't interchangeable. She was showing him something that I didn't experience with her. It was posta. She was
Those
using
are different
poppy
stories.
seeds.
These are
Poppy
different.
seeds she always ground to a paste. She had poppy seed paste and mustard paste. I didn't have sesame seeds.
Yeah, he was talking about a different.
This
bread,
is a
and they're
different
two different
preparation,
things.
it's different, not related.
But on a daily basis, she would have posta, because that's very Bengali. You could have data posta and jingda posta and posta in the shukta. It was part of the flavoring for Bengali cooking. Those are right.
Haribol. I have two questions actually. The first is, as you travel around the movement, is there any center where the kitchen we can find the preparations made according to the standard that Srila Prabhupada set? That's my first question. The second one is, since Prabhupada's arrival, we've had so many millions of people become vegetarian. But there's a rise in the vegan movement. So I'd like to know what your opinion is of that movement, and if we can integrate any of what we're learning from the vegans in our cuisine in ISKCON. Thank you.
Oh, boy. I'm going to speak on this one. There's nothing like original Indian Ayurvedic cooking. I'm a vegan. It's a health reason, none other than a health reason. But if you've got the health, there is no diet like what Prabhupada taught us, the Ayurvedic teaching.
And
that's my opinion.
Sorry, but I'll add some of the anecdotes that Prabhupada said over the years. We're not vegetarian or non-vegetarian. He said we don't, he said we are prasaditarians. He said there's violence either way. So that was something that he stressed. And then he also, I just read recently, we are not ahimsa. And he said there's always violence. He said it's prasada. He said that's the difference. He said so vegetarian, non-vegetarian, we're prasaditarian.
Now we're going to hear from his departed Tamal Krishna Goswami. Can you arrange that, Siddhanta Prabhu?
When we got to Rishikesh, Prabhupada was ill, and we were staying in this house, Ganga Darshan, very nice house, right overlooking the Ganga. Prabhupada had been lured there by Navayogendra Swami, who told him, if you drink water, I think it was he who lured, if you drink water there, you'll get back your health. So as soon as we got there, Prabhupada told me, bring Ganga Jal. And I immediately put on my gumption, I dove off the second story of the building, because it was overlooking the Ganga, and I dove into the Ganga from the second floor. Prabhupada was getting his massage, and I went out with a lota and came back, swam back with the lota, brought up Prabhupada right in the middle of the, and he was not eating well at this time. It was the last months. He immediately took a full, glass of water, and a big belch came out afterwards, and Prabhupada said, accepted. And he smiled, and he was very pleased with that. I was standing there dripping wet, and accepted. So then he immediately ordered, go out and get kachoris and jalebis. There was one shop very famous for making jalebis and kachoris in Rishikesh. And Prabhupada said, this hot jalebis is a remedy, cure for sore throat. He said, now it is a little cold, we must get hot jalebis. So we ate hot jalebis, and he said, this is, whenever you have sore throat, you eat hot jalebis. But it must be made fresh hot. And another time, Prabhupada gave me the cure for, it was a very nice cure, isn't it? Jalebis, if they're made nicely, are so tasty, and that's how you get better. Another cure he gave me was when you have dysentery. Hot puris and salt. The puris must be cooked in ghee. They must be right off the fire with salt. And sure enough, I had this dysentery. I took hot puris and salt, immediately cured, like a cork. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's, I think it was appearance day. So I told Prabhupada that, Srila Prabhupada, can we celebrate this in the evening? Because then we'll have a lot of guests. Prabhupada said, no, it must be celebrated at noon. So it was on a Friday. I said, Friday evening we can fill up the temple. He said, no, it must be at noon. So we celebrated in the room, in Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada had a little room. This is La Cienega Boulevard Temple, LA. Prabhupada had a side room next to the big temple room. So Prabhupada did all of the prayers and spoke about his Guru Maharaj. Then he said to me, how is the feast going? So I said, I'll take a look. It was about 10:30. So I went in. Nothing was done. There was no preparation. So I went back and I said, what is going on here? I started screaming at them. They said, well, you told us it was going to be Friday night. I said, Prabhupada wanted it at noon, and maybe it was my mistake. I might not have conveyed the message in any case. So I went back to Prabhupada and he said, so, how is it going? And I said, there's nothing done. Prabhupada just looked at me. Didn't say a word. Got up, walked out of his room, through the temple, through the prasadam hall and into the kitchen. He immediately told the devotees, get this done, cut this vegetable. He cooked a feast in 1 hour for at least 70 devotees. Person cooked the whole feast, at least 12 preparations, within 1 hour's time. And he always told me, I always remember this, Prabhupada always said, deity worship is 1 hour's business, cooking is 1 hour's business. Cooked the whole feast in 1 hour. And I remember one of the best things I remember about it was the way Prabhupada made the puris that day. Because every puri puffed up. He put in the puri in the hot ghee, and he would just touch it. And it was like he would touch them. I remember they would blow a little and he would touch them, even sometimes with his finger. It was just perfect puris. Then the feast was offered, and it was brought out of Prabhupada's room after. It was given to Prabhupada, the whole Maha plate. Within about 3 minutes afterwards, it came out practically untouched. And we were all eating this big feast, and we saw Prabhupada didn't eat it. Prabhupada was very upset. But he still cooked the whole feast for his Guru Maharaj. He was determined that it must be, and he told him it must be offered by 12. But he was very disturbed.
Any comments from our distinguished panel? Into your mics.
Punctuality, time.
Anyone else? So then, we have a lot of nectar left to flow from you all. It may have to wait until another year, but there will be many devotees who are going to approach you. Please be generous with them.
I have a question.
There are many questions.
No, it's a very important question.
But one thing we have for certain, we'll get to you, Guna. Hold on, I promise you. You're a special person, and time will stop for you, I promise. Who's cooking out? Who do we have that is assigned to cook? Is Palika? You and so Shrudakirti and Arundhati will be giving a cooking demonstration at 3 o'clock, and right after this session, it's Palika and Shruti Rupa, and Kaushalya is assisting. So, they're going to show us. Into the mic, please.
Kerala, Sandesh, and it's something I haven't made since Prabhupada, because he specifically told me how to make it. Apple tomato chutney. Made it once, and this will be the second time.
And Shrudakirti? I'm sorry, Shruti Rupa?
Something called chila. It's Prabhupada would take it for breakfast, and he said his grandmother used to make it for him, but Bhagaji showed Palika and I how to make it. It's soaked mung dal. I use soaked whole mung. In India, we use something called chilka mung. It was split mung with skins, because it's usually tender, but here I just did whole organic mung. And I soaked it. It's got a little bit of sprouting on it. I soaked it for 2 days. And then you just grind that you grind it with ginger and spices, and you cook it on a tawa like a pancake. And then there's a green mango, dhania, mint chutney to go with it.
Arundhati?
I'm not doing the bindi.
You finished? I'm going to make 2 things. I'm going to make pineapple chutney. It's a simple pineapple chutney, and Srila Prabhupada, when I made it for him, he said, this pineapple chutney has saved my life. So I thought that would be a good preparation to make. And I'm also going to make shukta, what we were talking about.
Right. And Shrudakirti?
Shukta.
You're making?
Well, it looks like we're going to have the cooker demonstration. We'll set it up at least, right? You're going to bring that, Shruti Rupa?
Yeah, I'll bring it.
Yes.
I'll bring it back.
She's the holder of the cooker. And then paratha, and what was the other one? The wet vegetable with fried paneer, cauliflower, peas, potato in whey.
So I'm going to allow 2 other questions, one from Guna, and then the final word, which is usually the case with His Holiness Bajranarayan Swami. Oh, you don't have a question? Oh, I thought you did.
Just give me the mic. Can you, Shutakirti Prabhu, can you please tell the story when you got very ill in Mayapur and what did Prabhupada give you for a medicine?
No, I had dysentery in Mayapur. And Prabhupada sent a brahmachari to Navadvip for garlic. Yeah.
He gave that to me too.
1 clove of garlic and you don't go to the bathroom again. I mean, until the next day. Yes, raw. Yes. It's, every time I say it, people's mouths just, but that's what he gave me and it worked.
He did the same thing to me when I was sick. He said to eat raw garlic.
Yes.
And I it's hard, by the way, to eat raw garlic. It's not, it's really,
Not pleasant.
It's nasty. But I chewed it up and ate it, and it really does work. Prabhupada said it kills any parasites in your intestines.
Yes.
I'm going to go back to Ekadasi. There's a lot of really strict rules about Ekadasi when you read the Ekadasi book. Don't eat mustard seeds, don't eat this, this, and that. I just wanted to know, in general, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but how Prabhupada would follow. Would he fast really strictly sometimes? How would he fast for instance, for Janmashtami and stuff? Because I know some devotees get really persnickety about how they follow the rules.
I have a little Ekadasi story.
Yeah.
It's a quick one. In Germany, and Prabhupada was walking through the pastures with all of his disciples, and it was Ekadasi. So they were walking one way, and then they were about to take a turn into the fields, and one of the brahmacharis, Prabhupada, don't go down there. He said, why? He said, well, they're wheat fields, and it's Ekadasi, and if we go through there, we may breathe in the wheat. And Prabhupada had his cane, which was sometimes an extension of himself, and he just pointed to him and he said, don't be a fanatic. Don't be a fanatic, just try to become Krishna conscious, develop your love of Krishna. That's what's important. That's what I think everyone here will tell you they learned from Srila Prabhupada. Just develop your love of Krishna, chant Hare Krishna.
So thank you all panelists, and now we're going to go out in front of the temple for the demonstrations. Get a big Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you all so very, very much.
I just realized the cure for dysentery was the Italian cure for Kausalya and myself, so it may not apply to others.
First part done. Yeah. Too much. Way too much.